Keeson.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And Joel, today's topic is letting go, which is a topic that I think was probably a major part of our first interview 12 years ago. Because I was thinking back to, because you were episode number 12. And on that 12th episode, I remember I was still very much in the range of trying to understand how the law of attraction worked.
Sure.
And I brought you on as an expert. And in the course of that conversation, letting go became a part of the main theme we were addressing that day. So here we are 12 years later, talking about exactly the same thing.
That's awesome. And I really find it impressive. You considered me an expert 12 years ago because I didn't know anything about it too much. So thank you.
Well, it actually shows just how little I did know that I thought you were an expert.
Exactly. So that's good. So it really, we both knew about the same amount, to be honest with you.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of discovered it together over time, really.
We did. We really hold it in. But yeah, the letting go is one of my favorite topics. Forgiveness, letting go, whatever term you want to use. There's, it can get, I'm not being controversial here, but there's a point beyond forgiveness or letting go where you just don't care. And that's that sounds so negative when you say that, but when you really get to the point that things can't affect you. So I often see people post something online, like one of my friends did this the other day, said, I really appreciate the people that stand up for me in a room when I'm not there. And my comment was, get to a place that you don't care what anybody's saying in the room anyway, and you're in a better place. So, and he goes, I'm not there yet. I said, well, but when you can really get there, like people that have attempted to harm me or have harmed me or cheat me or whatever those things are, there's no impact anymore. There's no one I harbor a resentment toward. I guess the term forgiveness of anybody that's ever wronged me, but it's beyond forgiveness. They don't occupy anything. So it's not an active thing where nobody can harm me unless I allow them to harm me. And obviously I don't mean physically, but just attempting to, say things. If somebody says something negative about me, I'm like, thank you. There's nothing that can be said about me that upsets me. Because I hear all the time, you're crazy. And I'm like, oh, yes, of course. I mean, clearly.
That's what we love about you.
Yeah, nobody's ever suggested I wasn't. I don't know where you thought I wasn't, So, but also just not being triggered by it, because the letting go or forgiving or whatever that term we want to call this for the episode is not really about the other person. It's about your vibration. Yeah. And so when you can dismiss people that have harmed you and dismiss the effect of that, that's the most operational part of the law of attraction that we're trying to do here is use that. I don't want that energy, so I'm not forgiving them for them. I'm just moving on, and it doesn't affect me. And there's almost stages of that. And I've done a few workshops, because so many people get stuck on forgiveness, and in my mind, there's just another page after forgiveness as well. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Oh, I'll even go a step further. Not only do I agree with it, I actually aim for something that the first time this idea was presented to me, I thought it was impossible. Now I no longer think it's impossible. In fact, I think it's desirable and reachable. But I don't just aim for forgiveness. Now I aim for appreciation and understanding of the perspective of the person who I didn't like, who was trying to harm me or something like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I mean, that's actually more powerful from my perspective. And forgiveness, actually, that's the easy step.
Yeah.
I really think.
Well, and years ago when we were talking about the timing of when we met, it was, like I said, 12 years ago. It wasn't too long after that. The company that I was working for, I left. Right. And left/fired. And the person that was the conduit of me leaving, the person that sort of set me up, the one that really orchestrated my departure, was my assistant. And so I felt at the time horribly betrayed. It really bothered me that she did that, and it was something that really haunted me for a while. And in retrospect, if she wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have the life I have today.
Right.
I really believe that she did me the biggest favor of anybody in the last 10 years. No, it's been 13. In at least the last 15 years of my life. I think this is the greatest gift she gave me. Now, there was no intent to be kind in her attempt to do that at all. For whatever reason, she just wanted me out of there and sort of wrestle control away, which she did. But I wouldn't go back for 10 times the money he was paying me before. And I'm not angry with her. I actually sent her an email a few years after that. Now, of course, I got no response. I said, I know it wasn't your intent to help me, but it was certainly
You really sent that email. I love
that.
I
really did. Yeah, I did. I said, I want to thank you. It wasn't your intent to help me, but nobody has done anything more important than what you did when you basically set me up to be fired. And I am thanking you, not because you tried to, but I just need you to know that was life-changing, and you gave me the life that I never dreamed was possible. Thank you.
Yeah.
Of course, I got no reply.
But you got two great things out of it. First of all, you found your way to the appreciation level, and second of all, you kind of backhanded her in a very nice way.
But she didn't occupy. I did, and it was there was no intent to. I was very sincere, and you really were great. And
yeah.
And so your attempt.
I'm trying to imagine what it was like from her perspective receiving that email. When she got that email, how did she react to that?
I have no idea. I'm sure she probably just rolled her eyes or whatever, and but she never responded. But she doesn't occupy any space. Now, that doesn't mean that I want to go have dinner with her or hang out with her. It's just she's not somebody I'd ever want to spend any time with. But nonetheless, she was just a pawn. Not I want to use the term. She was a pawn. She was a person in my life that was there to push me along, because I wasn't going to make the leap to my private practice on my own. I was not going to do that. I wasn't quite confident enough to do that. So she pushed me to make the leap. I'm not saying I wouldn't have ever done it, but she pushed me a couple of years ahead of where I was ready.
Yeah, sure. Exactly.
And so when I did, and then, the story behind that, I started, a couple of weeks after I left there. And within a few weeks after that, I was full. I never looked back. Practice was full, has been thriving. And it unfolded a chapter of my life. And that's where the law of attraction just, I really believe that I didn't want to be there. I loved my staff that I worked with, my therapists that I worked with. I love my clients, but the environment was very negative. The owner was a very rage-filled person. And obviously there's a lot of politics that I didn't even really know about behind the scenes. And at the time, and this was also somebody I'm very, I don't trust people completely very easily. And she was somebody that I trusted completely. So it wasn't a total betrayal, but I often say she gave me the gift of betrayal that allowed me the life I have today. And there is no tongue in cheek in that statement. It is very sincere that she is one of the things, her actions are something that really gave great advancement to my life. And I mean that.
Well, taking it a step further, though, I think you're also saying is that you're genuinely expressing that while this is not somebody you want to hang out with, this is somebody who actually did you a big favor, and you feel like it was a really, really big favor.
Yeah, and because I wasn't at a place, because there were days I'd leave going, I got to get out of here. I just got to get out of here. And I wasn't going to do it, because I had loyalty to my staff, and I knew that things would go crazy if I left, and it did. And all that stuff. But me and the owner of the company, we're fine now. We're friends. We don't hang out together much, but we talk occasionally. Haven't spoken. That happened. I haven't spoken to this lady since that day that happened, other than my email. The only communication I had. But I'm just using that as an example. I'm way beyond forgiving her, and the sort of supporting your concept. I'm grateful for the act. I'm grateful, regardless of her intent. That I don't know anybody that's helped me more than she has, as I said, in the last 15 years.
And I can actually say, just from my own experiences of doing exactly what you're talking about, once you learn to do it the first time, Once
Oh,
you
yeah.
learn to find a situation where there's somebody who wronged you or somebody who treated you badly or something like that, and you can actually think about them in an appreciative way, it's an amazing feeling.
Oh, yeah.
I
But
mean, it's just it's an unmatched feel. I can't match it up to anything else in my experience. It's very different from anything else I've ever experienced.
well, you take away that, so many people get occupied. I'll never be able to forgive that person. I'll
Mhm.
never be able to let that go. And when you realize that other person that you can't forgive or let go of what happened, they're not being affected by that. You are.
Right.
And and as we know, the law of attraction responds to the frequency and the vibration of what we're feeling. So if this hate slash anger or whatever term you want to use, or this bad feeling is existing because of, the law of attraction, again, it doesn't identify where it's coming from. It just says, hey, we're going to give you more, whatever this craziness you're thinking is. And so that's what you get. And that's why people get stuck in, letting go. And, like my, one of the things that, in my childhood, I had, my alcoholic grandfather who was very abusive and loud and all that when I
Mm.
was a kid, and my biological father who was a compulsive gambler. Well, he was never abusive. He took all the funds of our house, and we ended up having to live with my alcoholic grandfather. Now, both of those people are people that I understand, since I know addiction so well. I have changed that narrative. I If it weren't for the experience I had as a child, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. They were
Mm.
not good experiences. I'm not trying to say they were good experiences,
No, no.
but they have. I harbor no resentment to either of them because they both had their own issues. I now understand. I know why they both were addicted. They both had individual stories that were horrific, and so I forgave them at some point, and now I've gone beyond the next page. I'm grateful for the experiences that they brought to the table for me. Not that those were great experiences, but I'm not the man I am today without what I've been through. And I really
Mm.
look at it that way. I'm not pro child abuse, as some people. I'm not saying that. I am. I'm just simply saying events happened. I responded to it. I had a chain of my own events happen. That also made me more forgiving of them because I had an addictive period of my life. But right now, I see all of this as a perfectly orchestrated thing leading to my
Mm.
life right now. And
Yeah.
so there's not a person alive, there's not a person anywhere, live or dead, that I harbor resentment or bad feelings toward of anymore at all.
That's really an accomplishment. It's a
It,
tremendous accomplishment. And
and
it
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 helps.
reminds me of something too. It reminds me of those early conversations that we had here on the podcast. I mean, I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but that first episode, I do remember letting go became part of the conversation. But I don't remember at which point during our conversational journey that I brought up the idea, well, if I'm supposed to let go, what am I letting go of? I remember I used the analogy of a steering wheel in a car. I'm supposed to let go of the steering wheel, but I don't even know where the steering wheel is. How am I
Yeah.
supposed to let go of something when I don't even know what it is I'm letting go of?
Well, yeah, the letting go has a visual to it that you're releasing, and that's like letting go of
Yeah.
steering wheel or something. But more than anything, it's sort of the art of allowing. When Abraham Hicks talks about allowing,
Hmm.
there's a difference between accepting something and then just simply allowing life to happen. And this is sort of a parallel to that. Just letting go is just what has happened, and your attention to it does nothing to change it, but it can affect your vibration right now. So people that have been through traumatic stuff, or people that have been, you got to let it go. You'll hear that a lot. But in the process of letting go, you're still focused on the thing, and that's keeps you sort of enmeshed with that. But being able to almost just allow everybody to be everybody, allow every event that ever happened to happen, and sit and get to a place of non-judgment. Now that's not an easy place, and I don't anyway. I
It
would
takes
love to
practice.
yeah, I would love to tell you that I don't ever get upset. I don't yell at the cars in front of me. I would love to tell you that, but Walt, I will not lie to
No,
you. Yeah.
no.
So occasionally but I don't stick with it anymore.
That's the
So
key word,
yeah,
stick.
yes, you if there's that emotion that hits with me, then I can immediately, for a second, I'm human. I can't control it fast enough not to feel it, but
Right.
I can quickly dismiss it, let it go. It's not going to affect my day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly it. And I remember those early conversations where I came to the realization of what you said early on in that little bit there, where you talked about how letting go is really nothing more than not paying attention to it anymore.
Yes. Yeah.
That was my, for me, that was the first breakthrough when I finally realized it's just about redirecting my attention to something else, anything else. That's like the first primary step of letting go of
Yes.
something. Because until you turn your attention away, you can't let go.
Well, the way the brain focuses, especially when you overthink something or the harm or an end of a relationship, everybody has most people that have a relationship that ends have a similar way of dealing with it.
Mhm.
They will, they first the one that didn't want the relationship to end starts a mental negotiation. Then they replay conversations over and over, just trying to get nuance. What did she mean? What did he or she mean by that?
Right,
Or
right,
was there a clue? Or
right.
and I know you went through a horrible, painful breakup. We
Oh yeah, it
spoke,
was not fun. Yeah,
and
and I
and,
asked all
and
those same questions.
yeah, and we answered those questions. We talked about it, and I told you we're not going to know the answer, but it's good to it's okay to ask them. But
Mhm.
understand you're never going to get the answer. I'm not saying never, but you're not going to get it that day. You're
Best advice, by the way, that you gave me. I love that advice. To this
yeah,
day, I love it.
yeah. Thank you. And it's so relevant. But when you realize your attention is you are what you pay attention to, because that's what is trying. So when you're looking at the deficit of whatever that is, the lack, the deficit, then your attention is on the deficit. So you're feeling the lack. When you're looking at the other, hopefully the abundance, or at least something more neutral than the lack, then your attentions are there, and that's your vibration. So it's really hard, and it's not something that happens instantly, and you have to get really good at it over time. But this is a practice behavior. But it just doesn't. I don't harbor anything anymore. There's nothing. And when I think about when somebody said, "Joy, there's nobody you hate at all," and I go, "There's really nobody. I can't think of anybody I hate. I don't. I mean, I don't even hate baseball players. I hate the sport, maybe, but I don't hate the baseball players. It's not their fault. So, but it's, it, I don't. But there is no hate here, or there is no. I don't harbor anything. It's just, and so if there's nobody can verbally upset me anymore. My son can try sometimes, and I can bite a little bit.
Well, he lives
It,
with you, so he knows what the buttons are.
he
So
knows where the buttons are. Yeah,
yeah.
he's. I mean, when he turned 18 and was given all the knowledge in the universe and became an expert in everything, I thought I'd be helpful, but it's not at all. So, it's not remotely helpful. Those
Many
of you,
parents have come to the same conclusion.
yes, yes. I was thinking that would be like having a built-in Google, but his
Yeah.
information. His information is not quality information that he knows. So, but all kidding aside, this is such a big topic because being stuck, letting go, the opposite of letting go to me is being stuck in something.
Yes.
And when you're stuck in something, it occupies so much brain energy.
Oh yeah.
Your brain burns a disproportionate amount of calories in your body. Your brain, it's a very high number, and I wish I remembered the percentage, but it's something like 25% of your calories are burnt by the brain.
Wow.
Which is for the size I mean, that's really, think about all the other functions of the body. It takes up a lot of calories.
Yeah.
And so within that, when you start just being stuck in those endless loops of whatever the frustration or the loss of betrayal, the answer is to redirect. And the concept of forgiveness is not, and I'm saying this in a little different way than I said earlier. Concept of forgiveness seems to be that, wow, you're very kind to that person, you're forgiving them. I mean, I'll be honest with you, that isn't why I forgave people. Now, it
Right.
might have been kind, but my intention was very selfish to forgive them. My
Mhm.
intention was to get them out of my space, out of my
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah.
And, and if it helped them, and I have let go of a lot of things, and yeah, I can't deal with that anymore. I've had people that have attempted to harm me or just, say things. And I'm like, why am I going to empower that? So when somebody says, hey, Joel, do you know what somebody said about you? And I'd be like, I don't sincerely promise you, I don't care. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I think you know me well enough that it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah. If it actually did matter, I think I'd probably go into a dead faint.
Yeah, and it's just, but that hasn't always been the case. I used to be very worried about what people thought. I used to be very worried about that. And right now, I'm just getting to, I can let go of, anything I can let go of now. It's just, because it's so freeing, and knowing once I really got a handle on the law of attraction, the vibrational energy that I'm feeling being the key to all of this, I can't have anything disrupting that. So I say this frequently on the show, before I leave the house, I adjust my mindset every morning. I make sure I'm right. I'm feeling right, the right direction. Not for no other reason than that vibrational energy that I walk out the door with can carry me through the day, or it can create a difficult day for me.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's also really interesting that by focusing the way you focus, by keeping it onto this belief system that you can forgive, that you can let go, and that once you let go, it's behind you and it's done. When you haven't experienced it, that can seem daunting at the least and overwhelming. But once you've been through it and experienced it, and maybe even experienced it a few times, you tell me, this is the way I perceive it, I think it's actually fun.
I've never really thought about it. I'm sure it is if I think about it, but you're right. I when I say, I think you sort of see how my brain works too. When I let go, it's let go, it's gone. It's just, so I'm maybe not perceiving it as fun. I will admit, when I wrote the email to the lady who did all that, that was a fun email.
Yeah, sure. Well, there's a good example of it.
Yeah,
right.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think about it in terms of, what are some of the things that divide society? Like, I have this little bit of a dark side of me. I like to look at what's going on with the political situation.
Yeah.
And literally the way I look at the political situation is exactly in this manner. It's in the manner of, I look at, a leading figure in it, and I'll say to myself, really? I'm laughing inside as I'm looking at this. I say, is this like a comic strip? Is this a real human being? It's hard to believe this is an actual human being we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That's the kind of cracked humor that I engage in when I think about this stuff.
Of course. I mean, a lot of our political figures have become cartoonish, and
They have.
playing. They really have, and it's something that it's fascinating. I don't watch it because of the way it's presented. They're trying to, create, everything's falling apart and all that. I don't have any time for that. I just stay out of all of that, because it's, and it infuriates one side or the other whenever I say this, but whoever's going to be the next president, I have a strong prediction that I will thrive. I will come out on top. I'll be better off than I was the 4 years, as I have been for every president since I turned my life around. So,
because it has nothing to do with the president.
It never had anything to do with the president. That's the belief system that, that's what goes on. And either one side or the other there's going to be financial gain for me on one side or the other. And I'll find it is no problem. I'll be fine. And that's that's how I live my life. I believe that. So I let go of all that process or feeling like a victim of anything. It's like, okay, well, and it infuriates people, because I don't signal my political leanings often. I'm just simply like, I don't care. It's all silly. It's all silly.
Well, it is, truly is, but that's also what makes it fun. See, I do have a cracked sense of humor. I really do. I mean, I'm the first one to admit it. And I enjoy watching people just crack up.
I mean, the political memes that I see on Instagram and stuff, those are funny, because they'll just take the most absurd statement that either side says, and you're just going, it would seem like, boy, they made that up. No, they didn't make that up. They literally said, in one of these memes, this is something, and again, this is not a leaning to either side for me, but in a very intense, our last debate, that we had between, President Trump and President Biden. They literally had a 5-minute discussion on their golf game. These are two grown men. They have both been the most powerful man in the world, the leader of the strongest nation in the world. And they're in a pissing contest of who can hit the golf ball farther. I was expecting them to pull out their penises and measure them.
You see what I mean when I say this stuff is fun? This stuff is just fun.
So but it's so absurd.
It is.
What's your stance on the war in Israel? My golf game is better than yours, and I can outdrive you. and you're going, really? And you think one side would go, okay, well, let me not engage with this. The other one then starts arguing. I can outdrive you. It's like, wow. And so you see that and you realize, it's not serious stuff. It's not.
It's right out of the old musical Annie Oakley. Anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you.
Yeah. It's just it's laughable that that's our political situation. But again, you can if you don't look at it through that eye and you really start buying it, it can really affect you. If you really believe the world's falling apart, our country's falling apart, it is. It's not falling apart for me, but it can be falling apart for people that really believe it's falling apart. Your situation,
and that's the letting go part. That's the part that you need to let go of.
Yes, absolutely.
And there's a really easy way to evaluate what the part is that you need to let go of. It confused me for the longest time, but I finally realized that there's a very, very, very simple rule. And that simple rule is this: when I think about whatever that X is, whatever that behavior is, or the argument that's being made, or the political speech that's being made, or the platform, or whatever, whenever I think about whatever that is, how do I feel? If I don't feel good about it, I know that's something that I need to let go of.
Absolutely. Let go of the stuff that you don't feel good about. Let go of the stuff that's not attracting your energy the appropriate way. Let go of that. One of the, as without all my need for the disclaimers, I am an advocate for the use of psilocybin in therapeutic settings, and I have had.
We've heard that a few times. Just commenting.
I just comment. And I also have had a few experiences with a therapist on how to use it. And one of the things I was fascinated about is when you're undergoing one of these experiences, you will have what I consider revelations, or you'll hear something, or you'll have a thought, and they're usually pretty profound. Sometimes they're not, but sometimes they're really profound. Sometimes they're just weird. But one of them, it's like when there's a couple of messages that I have consistently gotten when I'm in this process. Nothing matters. It's nothing, not in a negative, in a very healthy way. All the stuff you worry about, you're not even here really in comparison. Your energy in these shells, and you're fine. All this is an experience. You're going to be fine. Don't waste your time here worrying about minutia. It was not delivered that way, but it was that's the concept. And it's like, it is all minutia. It's just, you're here to manifest. You're here to vibrate. You're here to vibrate the energy and attract. That's my belief system, at least. That's why you're here. You have chosen to be here during this exact time to experience these events, is my belief system.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you use the phrase "nothing matters." I mean, not so much for the nothing part, but for the matters part. I love that part especially, because I think it's also one of the best ways to remember why it is we want to let go of things.
Yes.
Because anytime that we focus on something, we're turning it into matter. That's what we mean when we say it matters. Fill in the blank, it matters.
Yes.
And so literally, we need to be paying attention if we really want certain things to matter and other things not to matter, meaning that we really want them to turn into physical reality versus not turning into physical reality. We got to pay attention to what matters, to
Absolutely.
what really matters.
What really matters. And the idea for me, when I realize whatever I'm worried about today, which by the way is nothing, but if I were worried about something, and this helped for all, because I had a lot, I dealt with a lot of anxiety and a lot of worry over the years. I have graduated past all that, but I had a revelation one time. All this stuff that I'm worrying about is, 99.9% of it never happened. And when the stuff I did worry about did happen, I handled it like I've always handled it.
Yeah.
And it worked out fine. Everything worked out fine. So whatever, here's a test. If you can go back, what was your biggest concern 3 years ago this day?
3 years ago this day. So
Yeah.
let's see. That would be July. Today's the 22nd. So July 22nd, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's see. We were toward the last part of the pandemic. So that was probably somewhere in the background. I have no idea. I can't even begin to tell you.
But I promise what you were worried about then seemed like it was a big deal.
I'm sure it did.
But it doesn't, you don't even remember it.
Nope.
And that's the thing. It's this idea that, oh, this is so terrible. And, people lost people during the pandemic. I'm not minimalizing the pandemic. I'm not trying to say that, but I am saying that we think that all these events are, oh my goodness, what's going on? And they end up, they just never happen. So being able to let go of them when you're so worried and not, it's going to work out. We have a magical way of things working out. I always tell people, all of us, we have a 100% success rate in dealing with things we didn't believe we could deal with. 100%. You're here.
True.
You survived it. Now, some of my some of my stuff was not pretty.
Yeah.
It was
not.
Not
You're right
pretty.
the first time, but that's okay.
Yeah. It wasn't pretty, but it everything, I handled it, and we're fine. You know what I'm saying? It's just so the idea that somehow, oh no, everything's falling apart. In my darkest day, and I've had some very dark days.
Very.
I didn't think I survived, and not only did I end up surviving, I ended up thriving. And that's something that I didn't even know that was possible. And now that I know it's possible, in fact, now it's just cruise control.
There's actually a really useful clue in there too. You ended up thriving, and you didn't know it was possible.
Yes.
That's reassuring, really, because
Yes.
for somebody who's in a low vibrational state, a low amped up state, that is a common experience. I don't know how anything could turn into thrive here. I don't know how this could actually turn out well. How nice to know it actually can.
And that's what happens is when things happen and you just keep thinking everything's terrible. And somewhere along the way, I had an epiphany of this, and in many years, early in my recovery, it's like, okay, I was worried. I was always scared to death of going to jail, and it was, that because I knew a lot of the stuff I was doing in my addictive behavior was, is illegal, and I'd probably end up going to jail. So my biggest fear is going to jail. So I went to jail, and other than being exceptionally boring, it was absolutely not near. In fact, it was a relief. I think I've told you before.
You have, yeah.
That one of the most freeing moments of my life is I worried for a couple of years. I knew jail was inevitable. That was the event. And they arrested me. They took me to Hillsborough County Jail in Tampa. When they finally got me processed and I got back to my room, they shut the cell door. You would think, oh my God, it would be a hard. I was like, oh, thank God, this is over. Truly.
Yeah, I believe you. And it's one of those things when you first hear the story, it seems incredible until you think about it for a moment.
Yeah.
And then you realize, well, yeah, how often do we coined a term for this, awfulize. How often do I awfulize stuff in ways that make it far worse than whatever the actual thing is?
Yeah. And jail was not fun. It was very boring. It was not dangerous. I felt very safe. I sat there for roughly 30 days and listened to the most ridiculous conversations. I read every book, and we watched PBS. Do you remember the show Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I watched that every day.
Yeah, that's punishment.
That is. I don't even like that Carmen anymore. I screw her. I don't care where she is. Doesn't matter. But it was that was all there was there. I mean, so it was boring. The food was terrible, but I was okay. I got out. I began the process. So the relief, the worry, the fear, my biggest fear of all that, the day it happened, I was relieved that it happened. And when I was relieved, Walt, I had no idea, am I going to be in jail for 10 years? Am I going to be in jail for 5 years? Am I going to be in jail for 30 days? I just was relieved that I could quit worrying about it. I have finally ended up worst case scenario. Turns out the worst case scenario was not near as bad as I had imagined it.
So I guess the real question becomes, since we hear that story, and I'm sure listeners are hearing that story, and since we probably believe it, I certainly believe it, that it's true, we can probably also come to the conclusion that there are times in our own lives where we've had similar experiences. So I guess the question becomes, well, if we know that's true on some level, we believe it's true on some level, how can we connect to it on demand?
That's, I think, getting to the place where you can is sort of the goal.
Mm.
Does that make sense? Any of these things that we're talking about, any of these being able to let go on demand, being able to move on demand, be able to see things in real time that this is going to work out for the best, is a really hard thing to do.
I think for me, the answer is partly just trying to do it over and over again.
Yes, you do it enough. And when you get enough evidence that everything is going to work out, you quit worrying about every little detail. You quit worrying about what am I going to do about this?
In fact, you start turning the details around. You start creating details the other way.
Absolutely. And, you know, the one thing that had helped me, I mentioned when I left Williams of Wellness, you know, when I left work, I left work on that Friday with a job, and I've never been back to that building. Any of my stuff that was there, I just said throw it away. I didn't want to go back. I never looked back, never been back. And I didn't know what was going to happen, but I was far enough along with my law of attraction. I had no doubt it was going to work out. I just hadn't got to the point of understanding how.
Right.
But there was no doubt.
Which was probably good, by the way. I mean,
yes.
That from what we now know, that was probably the best thing that could happen, is that you didn't know how, and you weren't even trying to figure out how.
In fact, the timing of it was perfect, because the week after I was fired, I ended up I had a plane reservation to go down to Florida and spend time on my bench, where I'm at, where all my thinking's done down on Anna Maria Island. And I mean, I didn't have to make a plane reservation. It was already preset. I was ready to go. I was preset.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing that I don't even think I even realized how the timing of that was already in place. And I just went down there, had a great time, sat on the bench, got a call from Dr. Master, who was my mentor at the time. He said, I got an office in my building, and I want you to come in there and start your practice. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Life coaching, is that a thing? I don't even know what that means. And I didn't do anything really. It just fell into place. It was amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. In fact, I remember the first time you told me that story. Not only did I think of it as being amazing, I thought of it as pseudo impossible.
Yes.
Because from where I was sitting, that was impossible.
Yeah.
The only reason I actually ended up buying it is because I believe you.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the fact that you have, in my mind, tremendous credibility, I would have said, "Yeah, right." Pull the other leg while you're at it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've actually told people, I don't. If this didn't happen to me, it doesn't seem plausible. It doesn't seem. No. It really doesn't. It just worked out. Like, really? I mean, and I'm not
saying, it were a lie, if you were telling a lie, it would be such a poorly framed lie that no one can believe it.
Yeah, yes. That's the thing. It's such a ridiculous lie.
Yeah.
Because it's just, and other than having the evidence of wow, here I am, here's what I'm doing, it's just amazing. And but I was able to just, and I didn't even really identify it at the time, but I was just letting go of, this is going to work out. All I had was, I don't know how, but it's going to work out. I felt that. There was truly that feeling that I just.
Whoops. We just lost Joel. I think he probably, here he comes. Probably got a phone call. Is that a phone call?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he just went away. Came back.
Okay. It was a blip.
Yeah.
But, my mom and dad were alive at the time when I was down there. And I had to tell my mom to quit. She was worried to death. She was like, oh my goodness, son, what are you going to do? You lost your job. Can you beg him to get the job? I was like, Mom, stop, please. This isn't helping. I said, it's going to work out. She goes, but you don't even have a plan. I go, I know. It's going to work out. It drove her crazy. I didn't have a plan. And
I remember a few years back, a movie came out called the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. And there was a line from that movie that I've quoted a few times that I really liked. But the first time I heard it, I hated it. It just rubbed me the wrong way the first time I heard it. I had to hear it a few times before I finally started to see it differently. Because the first few times I heard it, I heard it like it was a threat to myself, which it was not. But the line says, everything is going to be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, it's not yet the end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of people hear that when they're middle of something and they feel they're being dismissed. They feel it's dismissive.
That's the way I felt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But when you know that's absolute, there is no growth without something the catalyst to make you grow.
Mm-hmm.
So if everybody got their job they loved or they got out of high school or college and they never left, and they just worked 30 years in the place to move on, then yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that if that happens for you. But it's the people that get fired or, sometimes unceremoniously or sometimes unfairly and end up doing great things. It's just, everybody I know that has mega wealth, and I know a lot of very, very wealthy people, they did it in response to something. They went and most of them were fired or unfairly treated. They went out and created something. And, sometimes to survive, they just had to do something that turned into a multi-million-dollar project or something. They never intended. They just tried to get a job or something. And
so is it fair to say that since these events that they experienced we're assuming that they were really negative events, and I'm sure you could tell stories that would reinforce that, is it possible then that what enabled people in those situations to let go was that their situations were so horrific that letting go was an easy option?
Absolutely. I believe that. It's one of the things that, in a similar vein, one of the things that I considered when I got out of jail and I had nothing left, nowhere to go other than this transitional living home that I was living at in Florida. I had nowhere to go except there, and nobody my mom and dad were not speaking to me, rightfully so. Had nobody. And it was surprisingly simple at that point. Only because I had no choices. I had to, the only job I could get my hands on was waiting tables. That was simple. You take the only job that's offered, you go do that. And I did that. And from that, I ended up helping out at the transitional living home, eventually got my gambling certification to help treat gamblers. And I walked that path, and that was not a path I would have chosen, but it worked out perfectly. And I didn't even realize all that was unfolding in a way that was going to be like it is today.
Yeah. How could you know that?
There's no way. And it seemed like there was no path forward. It turned out there was the perfect path forward. And in fact, as you're saying, if we even went through all the details of how, and it's a long story, too long story to tell now, how I got here and why it cannot be true. It's not believable. It really isn't.
It defies logic, it defies reason.
Yeah.
The whole thing, when you put it out on paper, you would say, well, this is probably what happened to you, because you did put it on paper. You put it in your book.
Absolutely.
And when you I'm guessing that when you wrote that particular section, you read it back to yourself and you said, no one's going to believe that.
Well, I've had a couple of people say, did all of that stuff really happen?
Yeah, right.
I go, it did. I'm not, it's just so, it's so ridiculous. And it's like, I always say, it was like it was perfectly orchestrated to end up here, despite my best efforts. I was trying to do anything but
your best efforts.
And it unfolded. And I really believe that for whatever reason, my realization that everything's going to work out and letting go with anything that doesn't serve you, being able to let go of that concept. It's the one of the last addictive things I got rid of. I used to use like smokeless tobacco, nicotine, like those little nicotine things in your mouth. And that was so hard to quit. And
oh, really? Okay.
But I quit. What I realized is, and this has been, haven't done this for 20 years, but one of the way I was able to quit, I was able to, I changed, instead of fighting the cravings, I'm letting what this is not serving me in any manner. It's not serving me, and so I'm going to let go. That was a period of my life. I use the phrase I let go of anything that doesn't serve me, and so I just approached it with it seems the same thing, but the craving it was different because the times I tried to quit before I was fighting the cravings, which is hard to do, but I changed my perspective and I'm like I'm not going. This doesn't serve me. I'm not going to give any attention to what doesn't serve me.
So this phrase, "this doesn't serve me," in and of itself, it kind of served you. The phrase did.
Absolutely,
And I say that because the earlier examples were about how you had no choice.
Right.
Literally, everything was outside of your control. There was one way to go. It was the only way to go. So you just went there because Hobson's choice. There's nothing else I can really do.
Absolutely.
At that point. But at some point, you started getting true choices.
Yes.
And it was your method for dealing with the true choices was what you just outlined, which was, does this serve me? You asked yourself a question because you'd already been through a series of events where you basically had no choice.
Right.
And now that you finally had a choice, you didn't really want to go back to that same place you were in before where you had no choice. You liked choice. I mean, everybody likes to have choice.
Yeah, choice is always best, obviously. But I do feel having no choice at the time I had no choice was a great gift. Because again, I had no choice. Well,
it was the no choice was guiding you where you needed to go, and you didn't know.
Yes, and that is that period of my life. Any choice I've made was always the wrong choice. So I promise it was always the wrong choice.
Yeah.
So the fact that the universe said, "Okay, this idiot, so we're going to just make it no choices. You only got the choice." So we have offered multiple ways out of this, and you have refused every one. So we're going to give you one choice. So can he get this right? I think my guardian angels just looking around the other angels going, "Wow, I ended up with this guy."
I'm reminded of a skit, and I don't remember what the skit was, but it was from a television series or something, or a movie where I remember what it was from. It was from the West Wing television series. That's right. Where the former wife of one of the staffers is also a congresswoman. And one of the reasons that she divorced him is because he did these really idiotic things. And he does this one idiotic thing in front of a large group of people while she's there. And she says, "Yep, that's my man. Everybody stay away from him."
There he is.
I found him first. Hands off.
Yeah, hands off. Yeah, it's really proud of that. So, but understanding the value of why we forgive or why we let go or why we move, it's really to me. Maybe it's not to you or other people, but it's really important to understand there's nothing you can do better for yourself than to forgive or let go of situations. And not because you're philanthropic and kind, but because
it can be for that if that's what works for you.
If you want to do that, I have no problem with that being a side effect. But one of the main things to look at is you cannot move forward if you're stuck on the old stuff. If you're by using even a more visual metaphor here, if I'm holding on to in my hands, holding on to the past, so with my anger or my frustration, I can't fully be present now and be able to move on because I'm hung to the past. I'm stuck to the past. And as you know, you've heard me say it a million times. You say it in various ways too. The only relevant moment we have in life is right now. And so how you're feeling right now is part of this process. And if you're stuck on all this other stuff, it just makes it so much harder for the law of attraction to respond in the way you want it to respond. It's going to respond, but it won't make a lot of sense because you're giving mixed signals.
Yeah, well, you're leading into my way of trying to navigate it, because my way to navigate it, the thing that finally worked for me, and I think this is really part of anyone's journey of trying to figure out how to let go of stuff. You have to find the one that works for you.
Yes.
And it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. For me, the thing that makes all the difference is to simply ask myself, how do I feel about it? Because if it doesn't feel good, that's my clue.
Yes.
And if it does feel good, that's my clue.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the whole. I mean, if I try to make it any more complex, I guarantee I'm going to make the wrong choice. But if I limit myself to that choice, I don't get it wrong. Because I always know how I feel about something.
Yeah, and if you have that awareness to know how you feel, that is a great. Again, it's a version of it's a type of the emotional guidance scale practice
Yeah.
of how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Just use your emotions to gauge how you feel about situations, and
it was hard the first time. I mean, I remember the first time I tried to do it, all my doubts were flying. Everyone was saying, well, this is a bunch of bullshit. What are you doing? This isn't going to do any good. You know, it's not going to do any good. All that kind of stuff was going through my head. Somehow I convinced myself to do it anyway, and nothing happened.
Yes.
And the amazing part is I got myself to do it again.
Yeah.
That's the part that really was amazing, because in the face of no response, no reaction, no result, I was willing to try it again, and even again and again after that. And I don't even know where it kicked in, but it's somewhere in that process of steps 2, 3, 4, 5, different trials of doing it, I started to actually believe it was true. I started to actually believe that if I just go with what feels good, I get the better result. If I go with what doesn't feel good, I get the worst result.
Absolutely. And that's important. That inner voice, that what feels good, that's your inner voice, and going that direction. I've told this story on the show. It's been may have been years ago. I know it's years ago because it happened years ago. This young lady sends me a text, and I get it like on a Saturday night. She's like, she's only like 20 at the time. So she was like, very dramatic, oh my God, can you call me? Worst possible thing happened today.
I think I remember this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I texted her back and I said, oh my God, how long do you have to live?
I love that.
I love
that. What a great response.
And she's like, what? I go, well, the worst possible thing is you've been diagnosed with some terrible disease. You're going to die. And she's like, well, it's not that bad. And I go, oh, okay. So I said, just give me a call. It turned out to be a boyfriend problem. So, but the in her mind, her verbiage and body language responding is the worst possible thing that could have happened. And I think her boyfriend cheated with her best friend or something like that.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, obviously she's not my client anymore. Many years, she's probably 30 something at this point. Last I saw her looking fantastic. She laughs about that still. She goes, oh my God, I can't believe that. I'm still embarrassed that you know that story. She said, it's so stupid. But I said, no, at the time it was important. But we do have a tendency to, awfulize or make things more. And when you can just realize, deep breath, not get so stuck in that, because if you always remember how you feel, your emotions and what that's it. All we're talking, law of attraction depends on that. And you that's the indicator of where we're at.
And that's why it worked for me, by the way, because not just that law of attraction works, but also I could count on it.
Yes.
I knew for sure that no matter what I said to anybody else or to myself, I knew whether the feeling was my real feeling or not.
Yes.
It was never in doubt. It was never a question. It was never a vagueness. It was always very clear. I may not like voicing what the feeling was.
Right.
I may not like giving it a label, but I always knew what it was. I could always tell without any more than a split second, like, yep, okay, I'm feeling that right now.
Yes, absolutely.
It wasn't hard to figure out anything after that. So when you have that level of clarity, because that's what that is, that's clarity.
Yeah.
When you have that level of clarity, then things get easier. It's easier to let go when you have some clarity because, you have some clarity.
Well, you get to a place like I think we're conditioned. I can be conditioned sometimes to, a reaction for a moment. The reactions can be primal. The reactions sometimes bypass my toolkit. And you it's that instant like woo, like I can wake up in the middle of the night and for a moment be like, okay, it's a bad dream or something weird, and but being able to, the key is being able to count on it, like you say, being able to pull yourself back, and there's nothing more important than on the most basic level you work on how you feel. You be happy, loving life and loving where you're at, and when you do that, it alleviates, and not worried about what the world thinks of you, or we're not worried about anybody that has ever done anything great. They're always criticized. It's just no matter which side. You know, there's never been a president that one side just didn't think they're the worst person on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, you know, did you ever watch the Oliver Stone JFK
Yeah.
show? Okay.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Just blipped out again. This is Technology Day. Had the same thing with the other episode. There we go.
there we go. Just the blip. So the other day I watched it again. You know, just current events maybe. Said, oh, let me watch that again. And one of the things I didn't realize is there were a lot of people that really hated JFK.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people for different reasons. And because he went, you know, he was killed when he was killed, and I've always never thought of him like, oh my God, he was such a great president, everybody loved him. It wasn't the case.
No.
But it just, at the time, the image of all that, the way they portray over the years, he's sort of been portrayed as just this really great president that stood up these things, and you're like, wow, the fact that the real time he wasn't well loved, and he was in fact really hated by the industrial war machine, and you know, a lot of the normal, you know, he didn't want to be in Vietnam, and everybody else wanted to be, you know, it's crazy.
Well, people forget that. I mean, they talk about the close elections of the 2000s. That election, the 1960 election between Kennedy and Nixon, was razor thin. I mean,
100,000 votes.
Yeah, it could have easily gone the other way, but it didn't.
In the entire 100,000 votes in the nation.
In the nation, yeah.
Yeah, not in one state. 100,000 votes.
Yeah.
That's how just in popular vote. That's how bad it was.
Yeah, it was that much divided. So it was literally 50-50.
Yeah.
So you talk to 10 people, chances are 5 of them hated Kennedy. It was that.
Yeah, but again, you never heard that narrative. So it was like, oh my God, I didn't know he was that unpopular, you know. Yeah. And it's like 50% of the people literally hated the guy.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, you know, my perspective of him has always been a real positive report, you know, what our perspective in life is really dictates our reality. So you assuming we most of us are brought up, and I've said this in a lot of shows, believing your reality is dictated to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be, as long as you believe that. But when you really realize your perspective creates your reality, and you're in charge of your perspective, you have the keys to the kingdom. You can do whatever you want to do.
And I did believe that for the longest time. Yes. That was the best thing in the world. Talk about letting go. When
Yes.
I finally let go of that one, that was one of the greatest victories of my life, letting go of that.
I agree with that. That was, for me, that I don't know why that statement in the middle of my growth and everything, when I really understood and really believed for the first time, your reality is created by your perspective.
Mm.
And your perspective is in you're the only one in control of that. So by default, you're in control of your reality. And I think it was Joe Dispenza talks about being a reality creator. That might be him. It's one of my guys. But create your own reality.
I remember very, very vividly. I remember being in a space where I felt totally powerless, where I didn't believe that I had any control over my reality. And I remember, I'm still married at the time. My ex-wife Louise was suggesting to me that if I wanted to try to choose differently, just to prove to myself that I could do it, that she knew I took walks every day and still do. And she said, when you take your walk, I want you to find one thing that is lovely in nature and just go in and study it. Just study it for a moment. And then ask yourself if by studying it, you're feeling any different. Just try that as an experiment. So I did. Yeah. And when I came back, I reported that, I did kind of feel different. And she said, well, that's what it is to change how you feel about something.
Yeah.
And that was a breakthrough. That was a mental breakthrough. Like up until that point, I literally did not think that was possible.
Yes.
But once I found out that it really was possible, well, first of all, I felt like I wasted the first 50 years of my life. But secondly, once I had figured out that it was possible, it was like, well, how can I learn to do this more?
Well, and you have, and that was great advice by Louise, because it was such a, let's look at this. Let's look at what's out there. Let whatever can change your perspective. When you, being able to find your power within something. And I get I'll look at this really philosophically of the the plants breathe out what we breathe in, and we breathe out what the plants breathe in. It's like, okay, that's very cool.
Yeah, it is.
The things, I won't even mention quantum theory because you know how that goes.
I think you just did. Sorry, too
Yeah,
late.
yeah, sorry. but when if I need something to, I can get fascinated by just the alignment of the planets, how everything keeps in orbit perfectly. I mean, there's so many things in play that are working perfectly. They're just working perfectly. So when things feel out of control, I'm going, in the big scheme of things, things are so synchronistic and perfect. This little thing, why am I worried about this when the moon moves the tides, which moves the oceans, which does this, blah, 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 and all this perfect timing and the way it's set up. And if anything were out of whack, just a little, none of it would be here.
I remember going through David Strickle's Taya boot camp. And one of the things that he has you do in that boot camp is you do a visualization, a guided visualization, where you literally in your mind's eye, you leave the planet Earth and you go out into outer space, and you go out so far that the planet Earth becomes this little tiny speck of dust.
Yes.
And from that perspective, you realize that's how big my problems are, because I'm a little speck on that speck of dust.
Yeah, you're just I mean, think of our poor friend Pluto. I mean, that used to be a planet.
Poor Pluto's been a rough time, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I mean, Pluto, when I was a child, was a planet. I mean,
it was a full-blown planet.
It's full-blown planet, and now they don't even they named it a dwarf planet. It hasn't even made it around the sun an entire time since that happened. It's very sad. It's like, poor Pluto's out there as a planet. Again, Pluto was a planet until we said it wasn't a planet. So I'm still Team Pluto. I don't know about you, but I
think we should resurrect Pluto. I really do.
We should. I think we can focus on that.
Pluto for planethood.
Yeah. That should be if one of our presidential people took that as a platform.
Yeah, I'll vote for that. Sure.
I'll probably take that up with them, because it's as important as everything else we're talking about.
Probably more so than many things.
Yeah.
Well, the only difficult part about this topic is letting go of it, which of course is hard because that's what the topic is.
So letting go of the letting go show. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll save it for another time. But thank you very much, Joel. As usual, this has been so much fun. I
loved it. Thank you. Well, great topic today. Thank you.
And thank you also to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.